And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Welcome into RBLR Bandits here at RBLR Sports. My name is Yurika Wheeler, and I am joined every single week with the one and only Zack Blaine. Mr. Blaine, what's good, my man?
Oh, man, we are so close to opening day. So close.
Yeah, boy.
No, I'm doing great, man. Just excited. I know it's been a wild week. We couldn't record on our normal day because of the fire evacuations, but hey, we're back. We're ready to go. It's exciting.
Look, nothing can stop. They can merely postpone the excitement here for Bandit Ball. Whether it's a brush fire or a move to a whole other state, nothing is going to stop. Well, a bunch of guys have moved themselves into Birmingham as training camp has started. We're finally getting pictures and videos on Instagram, on Twitter, all of this stuff about players practicing, reporting, getting that camaraderie, building those foundations, that bond that will inevitably be the Bandits championship this year. And it's good they're getting started because as we are recording, we are less than 13 days away from week 1 of the United States Football League. This feels like we just snapped our fingers and we're here. But we've got a few things to go. But Zach, man, how do you keep this excitement at bay for 2 more weeks?
I think we do exactly what we do here. We come in and talk about it, and that gives us the ability to let some of that excitement out without going too crazy.
Yeah, man. Well, unfortunately, not every one of the Bandits that we drafted in the USFL draft reported to camp. Unfortunately, there's a few names. We'll get into them here. The big name, we've talked about him a couple weeks ago on the wide receiver portion of or episode of this podcast, which is in the archives. If you haven't gotten a chance, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and go back and listen. We have detailed the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers, the linebackers, and we're getting into D-line today. But one of the guys, Eli Rogers, did not report to Bandits camp. And as far as the research that we could do, I did not find a reason or a news release or a tweet or anything on why he did not show up. But Eli Rogers, I mean, he was the number 1 receiver that we drafted. Is this going to be a big impact now that we've gone over all the wide receivers before?
Is it going to be a big impact? Yes. I think he was one of the most sought-after players in the draft. And I don't say that just because he was a Bandit. I say that because he's got probably some of the most NFL experience and I'd say some of the most NFL success out of everyone that came to the USFL. So to see him leave or not report is kind of upsetting, but I think that it gives some of our other guys where we're like, well, we got 3 guys that can play the same position. I think it gives some of them more hope, like maybe JF3 and even the new guy they brought in Rashard Davis. So, which, I mean, a guy out of, if I'm not mistaken, St. John's or James Madison. Sorry, James Madison. Another small guy, 5'9", 175. The same, same kind of build as Eli Rogers. So he also has the NFL experience. Not as successful in the NFL, but he's been with 3 different teams. The last team he was with was in the NFL was the Titans. So I think that it gives us, it gives another guy a chance, I guess, is the positive way to look at it.
Yeah, and I mean, not that they're exactly the same kind of player, but you would figure with that kind of frame, he's going to be like a slot receiver or possibly even a return guy. He's listed on a couple things as a return specialist, but we'll see. I mean, until we're actually playing ball, we're just kind of guessing at this point. One of the other guys that we've talked about earlier on the podcast, that is Tyler Catalina, a guy that we were very high on coming in here. Great name, and it looks like good upside. Unfortunately, he also did not report to camp for as much research as I could do, I also could not find a reason either from him publicly or a spokesperson or a family member. We did some digging. I could not find anything. But with Tyler being out, we have signed Jalen Booth from Indiana State. Zach, what do you know about Mr. Booth?
I know that he is a big boy.
Yeah.
He is huge. I think when we were looking earlier, we said 6'4". The last reported weight was 375.
Yeah, he's a small guy. Yeah, tiny.
Yeah, basically the exact same as Rashard Davis. No, I don't know too much about him, but I do know that he is a space eater for sure.
Yeah.
I don't see too many people getting around him, especially at this level.
Yeah. Well, he's listed as an offensive lineman, but he did play guard at Indiana State and San Diego State throughout his. Well, here's a guy who started out, on the very low level, junior college level, moved up kind of every year. He found a bigger program to go to until he went to San Diego State, and then was a redshirt senior at Indiana State. So big, bold, broad shoulders on him. But again, agility is kind of the telltales. What they're looking for are guys that can really move, irregardless of their success at the highest level. So, I guess there is one other guy that we talked to that did not report, but I'll get into him a little later. That's Adam Schuler, and he plays the position that we are going into today, which is defensive line, and edge rushing. So we'll get into him a little later. There is one last piece of news that we'll get into before we get into our player profiles, and that's with all the releases going on, one of the bigger names was New Jersey Generals quarterback Ben Holmes, who unfortunately, him being the number 1 overall draft pick of the New Jersey Generals, he broke his foot and will have to get that repaired. So probably not coming to the USFL anytime soon, if at all. But in terms of making a move to replace your number 1 starting overall quarterback, they did a pretty good one, I would think, on paper. It looks like a good move, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, to bring in a guy like Luis Perez, who for the Birmingham Iron.
Yeah.
Iron.
Yeah.
Cool ass name, first off. But to see him come in, and when he was in the AAF, just was dominant to the point where he was one of the guys that they were saying was going to get an NFL shot from it. I'm excited to see him play again. As much as I'm not a fan of any other team aside from the Bandits, I'm excited to see him play.
Yeah, here's a guy who's been on a few practice squads in the NFL with the Rams and the Eagles. He did well in Birmingham, and I guess the big name or the big news was that he never played varsity football in high school. He just kind of in college is when he did that. So, being in the AAF, being in the XFL as a member of the New York Guardians. Famously, he came in the last couple games of their year before COVID shut it down. They didn't start out that well, the Guardians, and Luis Perez came in and kind of righted the ship and did all right. But then even Perez, after the XFL, went to the Spring League, which was the predecessor to this current United States Football League, and all he did was almost win the Spring League trophy, losing by 3 points in the championship game. So Perez, I think, was one of the shockers that he was not drafted in the supplemental or the first rounds of the draft that they did earlier. So to have a guy who's just sitting around with all this spring league experience, with some NFL experience, I don't know if it was a contractual thing where just they kind of now that they're up a creek, now that we're 2 weeks away from actually putting teams on TV, now you maybe up the offer or something. I don't know. This is my tinfoil hat conspiracy but I don't know why all of a sudden he's available now that he wasn't available a month ago. But either way you shake it, the USFL gains another name that has spring league resume in his background. So
Yeah, and I mean it's good spring league resume. Like he's not just one of the guys. It feels like he can step in and be that QB1 right away. And I know one of his things is like a lot of people freak out that he's 27 years old, like he's one of the older young quarterbacks, and that was a big reason why he didn't get his NFL shot. I think like his main roster or his 53-man roster shot, because he is 27 years old. But like you said, he didn't play varsity football in high school. Like he didn't start being a good quarterback until college. So to see someone who still has growth, yeah, they're 27. I mean, the best example of that I can think of is like Brandon Whedon when he came in to the NFL. But it's like he's still got growth. He's still going to grow, even though he's a little bit older. He doesn't have that wear and tear on his body as some of the other guys do. So I think that him coming out and playing is going to be good for his career.
Yeah, those are all good points, and he might end up being one of these guys that's just not good enough for the NFL, but at this level, he can do it, and who knows what you just said, he might actually have more room to grow with the coaching and with just more and more experience. But what he's done so far, pretty impressive, no matter what his age is. But let's get into the main event. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of what this episode is. We have on our plate 8 guys that are going to be in the trenches hitting. We talked about the O-line last week. These are going to be the guys that are doing out dirty work on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to talk about D linemen and edge rushers. So we've split these up. Zach has 4. I have 4. Zach, who is your first D-line or edge player?
Oh, well, speaking of meat and potatoes, that is all that some of these guys are eating. I can guarantee it, because my first guy coming out of Texas A&M is Dalen Mack. Big, very big nose tackle. 6'1", 336, Vince Wilfork-esque body. Not to that level, so don't quote me on that, but just body. 6'1", 336, arms were 31 1/4 inches long. He did go to the combine and graded out at a 5.9, which made him a late draft pick / high priority free agent. He ended up getting drafted in the 5th round by the Baltimore Ravens. Did not have any NFL playing time. He was cut, but he is a guy that has a girthy, wide body, so he's going to be able to eat up space, probably stop the run, which I think is going to be a lot of the early games that we play. We're going to be feeling out a lot of people, and I think they're going to be running the ball a lot, so I think that kind of helps us out. Yeah. And some of his strengths were, he impressive growth rate from between his sophomore and senior years in college. Now, on the downside, like we said, there's always that but inconsistent, not going to put in the work every single play. So it's like he takes plays off, and at times he's hands-on too much to the point where he's getting fouls or penalties called on him.
Yeah.
So not much I could find on him aside from that. One of those guys that played on a big school or played at a big school on a big team. Okay. At A&M, so I think that he's going to be one of those guys that is there for us and is going to be our starting nose tackle.
Yeah, this was one of the areas that we'll get into. All 4 of my guys, not exactly the Auburns and the SEC schools and things like that. Not super small, but in a couple cases they ended up at bigger schools, but played the majority of their profile up. It's similar to my guy, which is Reggie Howard, is my first guy, coming out of Toledo University, which is not a very gigantic D1 school. But Reggie Howard is a defensive tackle. He went undrafted in 2019 and was an UDFA for the Los Angeles Chargers. And then after that 1 year of doing that, he went to the XFL, played some spring league with the Los Angeles Wildcats. So a little bit of continuity with some of the other Wildcats on this team. If we're looking at Reggie Howard, I think the biggest strengths that he's aggressive, very aggressive at the point of attack. He is quick on the snap. He sheds blocking really, really well, and to be honest with you, he's profiled as kind of a run-stopping defensive tackle. He's a run stopper who has in some of these profiles they talk about him finding the ball carrier. He has an innate ability to find the ball carrier, and at Toledo, take this for what it is, but he was very highly rated. He was the top run stopper in terms of like tackles for loss and per play for running and things like that. Against him, you don't run that well. So for the Mid-American Conference, for whatever level you want to take that as, he was a standout in his a goldfish in his bowl. He was the big one. So if we're flipping the yeah buts, weaknesses. 6'3", 280, so kind of smaller for a defensive tackle. For all of those good things I just said, he's not. We just talked about Jalen Booth. That's the kind of guys you're going to be going against in this league, and he's a little bit undersized, I guess, against those guys. But again, him being a late bloomer, kind of going to JUCO first, then Toledo is the highest level of college that he got to, and even then he only started one season when he got to Toledo. It was that maybe that's a little bit of that. We just talked about Luis Perez. There's a little bit of that in him where he wasn't a 5-star guy coming out of high school. He wasn't the main man coming up. He kind of like settled into Toledo at the end of his college career. So we'll see. Maybe he gets a little bit better coaching. Maybe in this professional environment, this is going to light the spark. But in terms of just in a vacuum, looking at what he does, it feels good to say, because we were talking about quickness and agility and everything. Now we're hearing the adjectives aggressive, right? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I want as a D tackle. Who's your next guy?
So my next guy, another D tackle. I feel like we're going to talk about a lot of them this episode. It feels like they got quite a few D tackles. Sure. But a guy out of Georgia, Mr. John Atkins, coming in at 6'3", 321 pounds. So he's got that, again, typical kind of nose tackle build.
Yeah.
And from my research, as bad as it sounds, that is about all the positives for him. Okay. I don't mean to dog on him too hard, but some of his strengths that I have from the combine, because he did go to the combine. That's another. He made it to the combine, so he's doing something right. Okay. And maybe it has to do with him playing at Georgia, but he did make it to the combine. Yeah. Graded out at a 5.6, which makes him a high priority free agent. And he comes in as a good football character and work ethic with a big and wide body. So basically his goods is that he's going to work his ass off to do what he has to do to stay around. Some of his weaknesses, stiff ankles, which makes him not very good with lateral movement. And he's not the best at shedding off blocks, which allows running backs to sneak past him. And he is basically guaranteed to not get us a sack. He recorded 0 sacks at the University of Georgia. And basically offers 0 pass rush ability for us.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, I mean, so we already talked about one guy who kind of like has talent, but maybe hasn't proven that he's got the heart into the game. Now you've got a guy on the flip side that's like, heart is his intangible. Heart is his his thing, right?
Exactly. So it's kind of one of those, what's going to work out better for us. Yeah. If he's going to put the work in, I mean, like I said before, he's got the build and he's got the body to be a good defensive tackle.
Okay.
Really, all we have to see is if he can translate that will and that drive that he has into the ability to either take over one of the starting spots or produce for us long-term, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, my next guy is an edge rusher, Mekhi Brown, who this is gonna be an interesting guy. Comes out of high school, highly touted, 4-star, top 100 in the country from like ESPN and all these guys have him ranked. He was a top 10 player out of the state of Georgia coming out of high school. Makes it to Alabama. It didn't start, he did work his way on special teams, and then 1 year later ended up going in his sophomore season. He played 12 games on the special teams unit and as a position player. But he transferred to Tennessee State, where he then got a chance to start at defensive end until an injury took him out his senior season. We'll get into some of the interesting things. He is a 6'5", 250-pound edge rusher, and was the 7th edge rusher drafted, if my math is right. He was in the second round of the draft, was the edge round, and he was the 7th one off the board. So, he's got talent, not exactly the highest in the league, but one thing you talk about him is he has fantastic speed off the edge. Okay, so he definitely has raw talent, and he's got a pedigree, and he's at one point in time he was like he was a blue chipper, right? But now we start talking about why he's here and not necessarily in the National Football League, and you kind of think at Alabama, he played special teams, made a few tackles in 12 games, but he's most known for swinging at a Georgia player in the college football playoff championship game, and then trying to fight his coaches and yelling and going at his own coach on the sidelines. And unfortunately for him, I mean, this thing has traveled with him. Like, in all the interviews, like, everybody wants to know. And if you Google his name, the first thing's going to pop up is like, he's the dude that popped off and he tried to start a fight and fight his own coach. And until he does something bigger and better to, overshadow that, that's what he's always going to be known for. So this is one of those stories that we're hoping that this turns this around. But it just kind of seemed like the bright lights and the big program just wasn't his vibe. Mackay's even went on record saying that, because he transferred after that incident, and so everyone was thinking, ooh, you transferred because of this, and in reality, he had already put in the transfer 2 months ahead of time. Okay, so there's a little bit of senioritis kind of going, like your foot's already out the door, and then something popped off, and not to say the same thing, but it's the Antonio Brown kind of thing where it's like he was already out the door. He didn't want to be in the thing, and sometimes when you're in that, your mentality, you don't bite your lip, you don't stop saying the things that you would say normally.
Exactly.
And go ahead.
Yeah, so you put in your 2-week notice at work. If someone yells at you, you're not going to take it like you would if you hadn't put in your 2-week notice. So
I'm hoping. I'm looking at this on the bright side here, and but he, even he, whether he's kind of like selling himself or selling everyone else on this, but at the time he went on record saying that, like, me going to Tennessee State in the Ohio Valley Conference is going to be a good thing because now I'm going to get exposure. He was kind of buried on the depth chart at Alabama, which happens. A lot of these guys we're talking about, This is what happened to them. But maybe he's a good salesperson and he's telling them, like, hey, if I go to the Ohio Valley Conference, I'm going to get all my shine. But at the same time, like, you did lose the battle at Alabama, or for whatever reason,
exactly.
you didn't rise to that level, which is the highest level in college. So we're hoping he can do that here, right? But again, I want to go back to the fantastic speed that everyone says he has. I mean, 6'5", 250, and he's quick and nimble. So, like I said, raw athletic tools are there. The question mark is in between the ears, right? So we'll see what can happen there. We'll see if maybe being around some of these high character guys, or whatever. I mean, who knows? Maybe just got a raw deal where he went. I don't know. I mean, I've never had a protein shake with him. We've never sat down and broke bread. So yeah, optimistically, I'm hoping that this works out.
And that's kind of one of the downsides, in my opinion, to going to a big school like Alabama or, one of the big SEC schools. If you mess up and you're not producing like an Alabama player should, that's something that's always going to follow you for the rest of your career. It's not something that's going to go away, like you said. You're going to get asked about that, and from the reporters, from all that stuff. So, shout out to Tennessee State for giving him another shot. But, he was lucky to have that shot, in all honesty, with how it went down at Alabama. So it just kind of sucks for him. But like you said, hopefully he can get between his ears right, and his on-field stuff should be able to translate, I think. So fingers crossed. Yeah. Again, I know I've said it a few times today.
Really, with all these guys, and I'm sure we'll bring it up with a few other guys that we talk about at some point in the year, but like really that's what this ultimately does is like we're going to blow the whistle, you're going to get back between the lines, and basically if you do well, that's really all that's going to matter, and if you want to get your shot, you got to perform on the field and be a good person in the locker room, and these coaches, like, they're gonna tell they're coaching trees. They're called that for a reason. They have roots and branches, right? So if they do well here, not only are the scouts on film looking, but they're gonna call up Todd Haley and they're gonna be like, "How is he in the locker room?" They're gonna call up Pep. They're gonna say, "What's up?" What's this guy really like in the locker room and off the field? So yeah, here we go. Your audition started, man. Let's go.
Exactly, and I think the one thing that will make him look better in that audition is potentially if he were to go to shop.rblrsports.com.
I like your voice there.
And maybe pick up one of our new Tampa Bay Bandits inspired T-shirts. I'm telling you guys, if you haven't checked out the website, even if you're not going to buy anything, at least go check it out and tell your friends because I promise you, we've got some of the coolest Tampa Bay team inspired shirts that you're going to see. We've got teams from the Rowdies, or shirts from the Rowdies, the Lightning, the Rays, the Bucks, now the Bandits, pretty much everything you guys need as far as your badass Tampa Bay shirts. And I think Yurika might actually have a discount code just for you guys. Don't tell anyone, except tell everybody.
It's super secret, super duper secret. If you use the promo code Bandit Ball, BANDITBALL, Bandit Ball, you're gonna get 10% off that brand new barely legal football shirt. All the fun the law will allow. Well, here we are, barely legal football, just for you. Bandit Ball, 10% off. We got 4 more guys to talk about. So, Zach, I talked a lot about Mekhi Brown. Sorry, but it's very interesting, and we'll see. Who is your next guy that we're going to talk about?
Well, I was going to say it's a good thing that you talked a lot about him because I think he was one of the only guys that we have a lot on, unfortunately, but maybe not unfortunately because that means these other teams don't have very much on him either. But the next guy I have who might love paper more than he loves our merch is Mr. Michael Scott. Not that Michael Scott, but to all my Office fans, you know what I'm talking about.
Come on, man.
This man came in. He is an edge rusher, which is nice. So finally I got to talk about one of them.
Yeah.
6'5", 245. He was a junior college transfer, played at Oklahoma State. He did not make it to the NFL yet, from what I'm could find anyway.
Yeah.
He does go by Mike. That might be because of the Michael Scott references.
Probably.
So I apologize, Mike. If you ever want to come on the show, we're here for it. I won't make any references.
There will be no paper jokes if you come on the show. Big
But yeah, so he is a guy that's played in. He came over to Oklahoma State in 2018 from Trinity Valley Community College. Played in 12 games in 2018. Was not called upon very much, though. He's one of those guys who he played in every game that the team had him, but was never a starter. And he had, this is going to hurt a little bit, but he recorded one quarterback hurry in 2019 against none other than, I had to get the reference in there, Oregon State.
Well, such a high-profile program like the Beavers, man.
So, yeah, he's a guy that's, I think, given the chance with his build, he's quick, he's fast, he's going to be one of those guys that can get to the quarterback given the chance. Like I said, when he's gotten in, he's performed, but he's always been kind of, I don't want to say buried on the depth chart because he's playing, but kind of buried on the depth chart as far as being a starter. but when he's coming into the games, he's giving that drive. And again, I'm talking drive a lot this episode, but it's because it's a lot of these guys. That's kind of what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
But he's given that drive that he wants to do good and he wants to get to the quarterback. So he's eating up blocks. He's eating up stuff for other guys. And I feel like given the chance to start, which he might get a shot here, he could be a guy that makes a difference. Go ahead and mark this episode down, whatever minute you're at right now. Mark this episode down as me saying that I think he's one of our surprise guys coming into it this year.
I dig it, man. Because I've got two more guys they're going to be sleepers. Because the next two guys I'm going to talk about were not drafted in the supplemental or the regular draft. They came in as free agents post that. And that's because I would have talked about Adam Schuler right here out of Florida, right? But he is the one of the last guys that apparently did not report to camp. However, this time I was able to find, on his Twitter, he's posting about real estate, baby. He's posting about selling, becoming an entrepreneur, and he's psyched and ready to sell some homes, man. So I'm not gonna knock that hustle if that's what he's got in his plans. Let's go, man. So good luck to him in that venture. However, he will not be suiting up in the red and black and of the Bandits. So what did we do? We went out and grabbed ourselves Zach Daw out of BYU, another BYU player that from what we were talking about last time. So we got guys on both sides of the ball from Brigham Young. Zach's
great first name too.
Yeah. Well, Jesus. Zach's got a 6'4", 271-pound frame on him, a highly rated high school prospect out of Utah. He was number 5 in the state by ESPN.com. A guy who was a two-time All-American high school wrestler. Ended up going undrafted in the 2021 class, but he was an undrafted free agent this last season with the Atlanta Falcons. Played both sides of the ball in high school. Again, we talked about that a lot last week, is some of these guys that we specifically brought in, they've played defense, they played offense. Well, here's another guy, but now he's on the defensive side of the ball. Recruited to play offensive line for BYU, but was converted. They do that a lot. It just seems like they just try to get big frame dudes and then go, we'll try you out on defense or we'll try you out on offense, regardless of what you've played. He did have a little bit of injury history at BYU, but that didn't stop him from being in the NFL practice squad last year. So we'll see if that nothing eye popping came out with that with injury history, but just something to think about. I don't really have a lot of unfortunately, not a lot of highlights or film to go off of with this guy. But I guess if there's one thing I could give you is pro day stats, and pretty remarkable for a dude that's 6'4", 271. He ran a 4.9 40, and he put up 33 reps of 225 when the average of that combine was 19 out of 400 and something people that did that. He was in the upper echelon of that. And then here we go. Here's another interesting one. The 20-yard short shuttle, right, where you you start in a 3-point stance, you go to the side, to the right, and then cross again. In a 20-yard short shuttle, he did that in 4.47 seconds. Which for a big boy like that is insanity. That's pretty good. What was the one thing? I was looking for game film. I was looking for all this kind of stuff. There was something interesting. He's going to get penalized for it if he does it again in the USFL. But he had a wonderful play against Tennessee where he stays at home off the snap. He stays at home. A little bit of a counter play. The person that would have been right in front of him has pulled. But the running back doesn't take that route. The running back kind of comes right at him. He shuffles his feet. He stays in. He ends up making it's like a 1 yard or 2 yard run. So he kind of stopped him at the line of scrimmage. But as he's tackling him, he's ripping off his cleat, whether on purpose or not. But he's kind of like the guy's legs slip. He rips off the guy's cleat and then immediately chucks that thing 30 yards downfield over the referee's head. So kind of like the referee couldn't see that he chucked this dude's cleat. And then but you're on high definition television now. Everyone knows you did it. It's just in the moment, in that little moment, he's trying to get that little advantage. So the running back has to hop around with one cleat on. I thought it was pretty funny, but Again, this is a guy who I'm coming out of nowhere, being almost like a walk-on, right? I mean, this is a guy who at BYU did lose his scholarship for a little bit of time, but he bounced back and got it back. And now he's not done playing football, so he's going to have another shot here in Tampa Bay, or at least in Birmingham, playing for Tampa Bay. And we'll see what he can do, but kind of an unheralded prospect, at least on the at the pro level, and yeah, we'll see what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, the whole BYU losing a scholarship thing kind of, to me, speaks volume, like that he got it back and he got himself together, because, you know, that means that he's faced adversity already. He's, you know, maybe he's already mentally strong enough to handle it, which is good to hear, considering some of these other guys are fighting coaches and stuff. Not to dig too far at Brown, but I'm going to dig a little bit. My next guy, possibly a better name than Zach, Mr. Austrian Robinson.
I love it.
Another guy that there's not much film on. He went to Ole Miss, so I know you guys are probably shocked. I didn't do any Pac-12 teams this week. I'm sorry. I know y'all wanted it. I wanted it. But another SEC school out of Ole Miss. I would like to point out real quick, his career highlight, meaning the highlight of his career, on the Ole Miss website, is 2019 Chucky Mullins Courage Award. Which, I mean, that's pretty cool. Don't get me wrong. Not hating on that accomplishment. That's awesome. Congratulations to him. I don't know what it means, but congratulations to him. Basically, he redshirted his freshman year. His redshirt freshman year in 2016, he played in 5 games, recorded 1 sack and a fumble recovery. In 2017, his redshirt sophomore year, he played in 10 games, recorded 29 tackles, 1.5 sacks. And then his senior year, he played in redshirt junior, his actual senior year. He appeared in 11 games, making only 2 starts. Those are only 2 starts of his Ole Miss career. No sacks that year. He did have 5 tackles for losses and 19 total tackles. But he did get a shot with Carolina as an undrafted free agent. They signed him. He did not make the opening day roster. He had a leg injury, I believe, and that kind of made his spot expendable. So he is a guy, though, that at 6'4", 300 pounds, has the ability to be a that's a big D end. You know, most D ends you see walking around between 260, 280. He's a big guy at 6'4", 300 pounds, who has more sacks than the last guy I was talking about or not the last guy, but the guy before, in John Atkins. He's a guy that I think is going to be able to hurry the quarterback, which is exactly what we need in this league, playing guys like Luis Perez and Shea Patterson, who I believe is who we're playing in the first week. So I think that it's going to be something that we're going to see. He's one of those guys that we're going to have to watch in the USFL to kind of learn more about him.
Yeah. Well, you talk about winning that award at Ole Miss. I mean, Chucky Mullins was a guy who is a very interesting story. You should look it up if you ever get the time. But
definitely,
it was a guy who unfortunately got paralyzed while playing at the homecoming game of Ole Miss, and unfortunately, it ended his playing career for sure. The spirit and determination, those are the words that are usually like pegged with, there's a committee that chooses a player at Ole Miss. So for them to choose this player for those traits, the determination and drive and positive spirit, it just kind of reiterates what you've already brought up with your guys. It's kind of weird that this is like all your guys have the same kind of trait, but it's because we're finding a pattern, I believe, is that they're looking for guys, especially deep into the draft when Austrian Robinson was picked up. You know, you're looking for guys that you're looking to see if they've got maybe this one little intangible that can push them over the edge. So
yeah, because he was one of the supplemental draft picks, so he wasn't even in the the original,
Right.
the first USFL draft.
Right.
He was one of the supplemental guys, and I think you nailed it on the head. You said that we're looking for a pattern, and it kind of seems that the pattern they're doing for some of the smaller name guys, like obviously most of the guys all the guys I talked about played at big schools at some point in their career.
Yeah.
But it seems like a lot of them have gone to community college or had that redshirt season or didn't play very much to start their career. So they've all been through that adversity of not being the guy to start off or not being the guy at all.
Yeah.
And they all have that character trait of we're just going to work, we're going to be in here, we're going to put the work in the weight room, we're going to put the work in on the field. It seems to me like that's one thing that Todd Haley and the coaching staff are looking for in the D line, especially from what we've gone over, is that dog mentality. Like all we want to do is play, all we want to do is work.
Yeah. Well, the last guy we'll talk about here is Johnny Maxey Jr. And now here is another guy who this is going to be the overarching story about his career. Now there is a caveat. There's going to be a little asterisk, and I'm still waiting to hear confirmation or whatever. But when they put out the USFL put out the graphic that said Johnny Maxey Jr. signed as a free agent, it also said that he did not report to camp. And so I'm like, well wait a second, like. Is he or is he not a Bandit? So we're going to, I'm going to, until we hear otherwise, the first time we heard that he was going to be a Bandit was that same press release and picture. So I'm going to assume that that's a typo or something and that he is a Bandit. So we're going to run off that asterisk, okay? But if he is a Bandit, the Bandits are getting a 6'4", 293-pound defensive lineman out of Mars Hills University. Zach, what state is Mars Hills University? A little pop quiz. No Googling.
No Googling?
Yeah.
Let's go with Virginia.
Close. North Carolina.
Oh, wow. I was much closer than I thought.
It's pretty close. But anyway, he was an undrafted free agent out of Mars Hills University. Now this was a while ago, okay? He's a little bit older of a player at this point in time. As we are talking, he is 28 years old. Not old by any means, but for the NFL or for the USFL, that's on the veteran side. But back in 2016, I believe, he made the Pittsburgh Steelers roster. But as a super duper long shot to do this is a guy who was virtually unknown out of college. He goes in as a UDFA, gets cut at the end of preseason, and in week 16, I believe, after so many injuries have decimated the Steelers, he gets pulled from the practice squad onto the main roster and actually plays and puts in a great effort against the Browns in a late season divisional battle where Mike Tomlin actually in the press conference post-game singled him out and said, guys like Johnny Maxey who are making their professional debuts, they put in work and did amazing things for us. So he turned, like I said, that his one opportunity. He's got one tackle to his name. He made one tackle against the Cleveland Browns in that overtime game, and unfortunately just didn't stick around. He ended up going to the Titans practice squad. That things didn't work out there. He was able to play there for a while. Did go to the Spring League tour now. So he was in the AAF. He was signed with the Memphis Express, but was cut, and then signed with the Birmingham Iron before the league folded. Now the AAF folded because of money reasons, not because of football reasons. But when the XFL started up, here he is, and now he's a Houston Roughneck in the XFL, getting another shot. Oh, wait, the XFL closed because of COVID. So now, a year or two later, here we are with Johnny Maxey Jr., hopefully, with an asterisk, hopefully a Bandit, and getting another shot. The one thing I will say about him is, again, very hard to find profiles or things on Johnny Maxey, smart people to talk about him. But from the couple things I was able to find, it was kind of a glowing review. It kind of seems like the guy was selling people on his prospects. but he wanted to say he was like very agile with a big frame. Again, 6'4", 293, with a 4.9 40-yard dash and very good short shuttles. This particular scout was praising very good footwork and that he fires off the ball. So, again, you're talking about how does a guy that comes out of nowhere able to make NFL practice squads and able to make professional football rosters like the AAF and the XFL and now USFL. It seems like he's got a high motor, a big frame, and just hasn't really put it all together, or maybe hasn't had the best shot. And anytime he gets a shot, he kind of gets cut down. But again, here he is. Here's Johnny Maxey Jr. hopefully getting another shot in the United States Football League.
Yeah, I mean, was that scout from Mars Valley, North Carolina?
I don't think so.
Because I don't know, did he make it to the combine or anything, or was this just what the scout was saying?
So this one scouting report was saying, but I believe the 4.9 is from a pro day, not a combine. I don't think.
Okay, but still a pro day. I mean, if it comes out at a 4.9, that's impressive for a D lineman. So, I mean, we kind of said he does have one tackle. I think that is one more than everyone else that we've talked about today.
Amen. Yeah. Right.
So that experience is going to be nice. And like you said, he played for Mike Tomlin, who, as much as I hate the Steelers, usually have a pretty great defense. Yeah. So, I mean...
and you got to think back then, I believe that's when Haley was there. 2016, was he with the Chiefs at that point? Well,
I think he was with the Chiefs or the Chiefs or the Browns at that point.
Okay, because
he ended his career with the Browns.
Coaches all know each other. It's a smaller world than you think. So, maybe that's here's a guy who didn't get drafted, didn't go to the supplemental, but we're faced with looking at a guy like Adam Schuler, who was a pretty high pick for the Bandits, not showing up. Well, let's go get a guy with NFL experience. So that's all I had. There's a lot more to talk about, though. So next week, we definitely will be digging more into the secondary, which is going to be a very, very important position on defense in this league. There's going to be a lot of aerial assault in the United States Football League. So we're going to get into all of the bandits that we have to take away that aerial assault from all the other teams. Zach, anything you want to say before we get out of here, big guy?
I will say that if we have any Pac-12 guys next week, I will be doing all of them.
We'll see.
Maybe not. I do have one guy in mind that I want to do, and I will. All
right.
I'll tell you guys about it next week.
You rock paper scissors on the other podcast, so maybe we'll figure that one out.
You know what? That's fair. We do. And when he says the other podcast, I don't know if you guys know or not.
Yeah.
But if it is your first time in, you're listening to obviously RBLR Bandits. We do have a podcast for every other Tampa Bay sports team around. We've got a Rowdies podcast. We've got a Bucks podcast. We have my favorite podcast next to this one, the Rays podcast. Obviously, it's my favorite because me and Ben Whitelaw are the hosts on that show. We have a Lightning podcast. So if you guys haven't checked it out, I highly recommend just going on. It doesn't cost anything to like and subscribe on all the major podcasting platforms as far as iTunes. You've got Amazon. You've got Spotify. You've got Google. We're on all of it. And excuse me, if you guys could just go on and give us a like and a follow on those. Like I said, it doesn't cost anything, and it just kind of helps us out, shows us how many people we need to come on here and get excited for and entertain. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, I think that covers it for me. I'm just excited for, in not next episode, but the episode after, we are getting ready for the first game. We're doing a game review. I'm excited, man.
Yeah, man. It's just around the corner. And again, Zach hit it right on the head. If you're making it this far into our episode, thank you. You are the real MVP. I'm going to ask you for one more thing. If you're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that social, we are at RBLR Sports, as well as RBLR Bandits specifically. Follow those. You'll get all of the information and everything that we will be putting out, players of the week and other cool stuff, other content we will be putting out, as well as every single one of these podcasts. So there is no more to say this week. We have a room full of rough, rowdy, aggressive, quick, big D linemen and D edge that we talked about this week. I am excited. I know Zach is like on the other side of this Zoom call, just like he's throwing things across the room right now.
Finger guns.
We're going to talk secondary next week as we march to week 1. So from all of us, for Zach Blaine, for myself, Yurika Wheeler, we say thank you. We'll see you next week, and let's ride.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.